So joining me today are, there we go. Stay. Always too low. Joining me today are three excellent voices in the world of virtual reality, and particularly virtual reality in education. I've got Rupert Rawnsley, who is technical director at Avantis and co-creator of Class VR. And if you're someone across, well, I was going to say the UK, but across Europe, I'm sure you're familiar with the Class VR sets. Chris Long is my longtime collaborator at this point, and usually official of so massive props to Stephen Sato, who is somewhere at the back taking over your job for today, Chris, doing all the official event photos.
It does feel strange being up here.
Weird having you up here. And of course, the inimitable Chris Madsen, director of VR and AR at Morph 3D, along with his wolf. Chris was on the...
He's a good boy.
He is a good boy. Chris was actually on the very first panel that we hosted, along with Jamie Donnelly and who was it in the end? David from Immersive.
It was David.
Well. Yeah, yes. David from Immersive. Unfortunately, David can't be here either today. Both him and Mike are on their way back to Ireland. They're on planes right now. So, gents, Ready Player One. Before we talk anything to do with education, tell me about your relationship with the book. I mean, I read it just by chance. It was something that fell into my lap, and I fell in love with it mainly because of it's like a love letter to the 80s, and that's when I grew up. But so Chris L. I can't call you Christian, but Chris L. Tell me, like, tell me. Obviously, have you read the book? Are you excited for the film?
Yes, it's it's been when I got it, I was a little bit slow actually getting on to read the book, but when I did get on to read it, I think I lasted something about before I'd gone through it all and smashed it out. And it's, as they go through the book, you can relate so much to real life. I think that was to see how you could use that in the daily life that you're doing, everything from, travel, the meetings, so much what we do now, you can relate it, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Definitely. Sorry, I was jumping to get a picture. Rupert, how about you?
Yeah, I like you. I read it when it came out. I identify more with the Haldane character, sort of, who kind of sets up this quixotic quest for them. I have a book actually, which is probably a terrible confession to make in this session. It's a as a literary work, limited, but on the other hand, it's an absolute roller coaster of fun, and pretty much every page speaks directly to me. I ran the Dungeons and Dragons Club in my school. I actually bought Tomb of Horrors and I dungeon mastered it. I kind of like uber nerdy things, reel of kind of 80s and 90s references that the protagonist Wade is kind of reeling off, and I'm like, yep, I hear you, I love it. So it's one of those funny things where I just didn't want it to end, actually. I mean, like I say, I'm not going to say it's the greatest book that's ever been written, because it's not, but it's a huge amount of fun, and from a kind of technical and nostalgia point of view, it's a real kind of a real piece of work. It's great. Can't wait for the film as well. To your original question, and getting Steven Spielberg to make it is, kind of Inception level, kind of strange, really, given how much he's called out during it. He pretty much invented movies in the 80s.
And I think I remember when talks initially began for the film to come out, I remember people saying, well, this is the book that could never be filmed because of all the licenses. And I think Spielberg's the only person that perhaps has enough connections that he could call in so many favors to get all these licenses so that all these elements could come in. Now, Chris Madsen, obviously, the big news coming out yesterday that UAD are one of 7 developers involved with the official tie-in experiences.
Yeah, we got the incredible privilege. It's a dream come true, to be honest with you, Steve, that we are the avatar engine for the avatar creator for HTC Vive for the Ready Player One experience, and we couldn't be happier about that. You talk about the book and my feelings about that. One of my favorite lines that they're actually using in all these promotional materials is, you come to the Oasis for all the things you can do, you stay for all the things that you can be. And I cannot understate how important. I mean, look at this here. I've got an avatar right here. This is how we each other. This is how we do these experiential things with each other, is through our avatars. And it's so important that people are able to be who they want to be in these experiences. Even when we started this program tonight, you were stressing out about the color of your hair because it didn't match the way you wanted it.
So for those of you that maybe turned up late, a couple of times when we've looked at the pictures, and if you haven't yet figured out, if you're on an Oculus or a Vive, you can use the left controller to pull up your tablet and take photos. They save to your, but a couple of times in the photos after these sessions, my hair's kind of looked red. I don't mean like ginger, I mean like reds, and it was bugging me. And so I thought, oh, maybe I've got it on the wrong lighter brown. I thought, that looks better. But then when we came in, these guys were all, why are you blonde? Why have you made yourself blonde? And so I use this. This is bugging me that I'm blonde. Why am I blonde? There we go. A little selfie with my man up here. Room and going and changing the avatar. And then I had to do it 4 times because it kept resetting, which was a bit of a pain.
It's amazing how attached we become to our avatars, especially when we have success in developing what we feel represents us. And, I know, like, some of these Second Lifers have been using avatars for years and years and years now, and it's so watching them come into a new VR experience and they can't port that avatar over with them, and they are incredibly uncomfortable that they're in another body that they're not accustomed to. So we're trying to bring the ability for people not only to build their own avatar of what they feel represents themselves, but also to be able to port that avatar to multiple experiences, which we've been able to do with some of our partners like VR Chat, High Fidelity, where you can build an avatar and step through a portal directly into their experience as yourself. So
amazing.
Exciting times ahead. This is going to be a lifetime of building to get avatars where we really want them. But we think we're off to a great start, and we think people are going to have a lot of fun with our avatar system.
Okay, so Chris, let me just stay with you for a minute then. So obviously, one of the key points in the book, and therefore also in the film, as you mentioned, is the idea that you can be whatever you want to be and you can do whatever you want to do in the Oasis. And obviously the main character drives around in a DeLorean that's got the on the front and the Ghostbusters on the back. And you see that obviously the characters, the physical characters, adopt different avatars within the world, maybe taking on more fantasy type appearance. Mm-hmm. As that relates to children, and as we move towards education, do you think there's the potential for issues there in terms of how people perceive themselves and body image, and perhaps someone that isn't happy with how they look in the real life, finding it very hard to come out of the virtual world? I mean, in the trailer watch at the start, Spielberg refers to VR as being the next big super drug. Do you think that people will end up wanting to be their avatars more than themselves?
I suppose there is some of that. Jeremy Bailenson has done some fascinating research into how in body avatar can impact us even after we take our headsets off. For example, if you're a person large in stature as an avatar, if your avatar is, 6'4" and walking around, you will actually, and research has shown this, when you take your headset off, you will still have almost that feeling of being empowered, that feeling of confidence after using that avatar for a while. So it is very fascinating how what we do in the virtual world will carry over into the real world.
Yeah.
And I also look at VR as being a great equalizer as well. It doesn't matter what our skin color is. It doesn't matter what our physical features are. We can all be on equal footing here, as avatars. But on the flip side, there's also the argument that if you've got the money to really buy a completely decked out avatar that maybe can do things that other avatars can't, how does that impact our social roles as well? So, boy, we are entering a new world here that it's going to be interesting to see how all of this pans out.
And this is the point where we all wish we'd invested in Bitcoin several years ago.
This week, at least.
Rupert, what do you think on that topic? Do you think that there is the potential for teenagers to become addicted to virtual reality as we move towards social VR experience. In the way that we see now, we see that the backlash against social media, and especially in use of social media with teens.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting question, and to some extent, that ship has sailed from a technology point of view. You know, we're having to prize our children away and ourselves away from mobile phones, from Facebook, from YouTube, from Candy Crush, from all of these, potential time thieves. So VR has the potential to be another one of those. A lot of these things are perceived as being antisocial, so people sort of glued to their mobile. You can't see them, you can't interact with them. What I've found surprising in the kind of these early kind of Wild West days of VR is that there's a lot of sociability. In fact, all of the core experiences, the best experiences I've had in VR have been with other people. They have not been in solo games. They feel actually a little bit isolating, a little bit kind of a little bit dull. As soon as you mix other people in, and as soon as you start swapping your avatars around and kind of working towards some common goal, it just comes alive, and that doesn't take a huge amount of technology. It doesn't take a huge amount of kind of content to do that. You can just have I've seen people in things like Rec Room bonding over throwing a basketball to each other, just making a game out of it, as children would do in a playground anyway. So there's two sides to that coin to some extent for me. Also, if I could go on a brief bit, the addictivity aspect of VR I don't think is necessarily there. When I got my first VR headset, I got a Develop It 2 Oculus. We played, me and my aspect of kids played with it for a bit. They never asked me to play on it again. They maybe played on it for an hour or two, and that was it. They never asked again. And when I was a kid growing up with home computers, I would I would go to another city if somebody had a computer with a game I wanted to play. Then nothing would stop me. So I've been interested in kid growing up with them that they still go back to their Flash games and their YouTube, even though there's a VR headset sitting here in the house.
Yeah, it's interesting. Right, Chris, what do you think?
Do you know what, while you've been talking, I've been desperately trying to remember a quote that I'd heard, and it was something along the lines of, don't teach your children the way you were, because they're of another generation. And it's quite key, this thing is along the lines of where we are with the technology now, is their world is going to swim around this technology. It's all going to be about this technology. So where we are with I think it will find a level to a certain extent, and certainly like where we've got the technology in the college, I've got students, I think it will want to come in and use it, as much as they can, but they're not all just in saying, oh, can we get a game up on it or anything. As soon as you just put any bit of want to come in and use it, educational app on it, they're just as enthralled with that, and they're happy to spend it on it. And a lot of the time, of course, us as educators, we're all older than them. We're going to be an educational app on it for different generations. So when we see them using an iPad a lot, we don't, because we're used to a different way of work, a different generation, something from back in the day. So it's hard to get used to it. It's like with mobile phones in the class. I've just read a recent report from a study out in from back in the day. So it's Singapore University, where they found that the students scored higher if they had their mobile phone with them than if it was taken off them, made to go in a pocket or in a box. So Singapore University, so forth, for that anxiety of not knowing whether there's a text. If the phone's in front of them, they know there's not a text. So they'll carry on until the text actually comes, and so forth, so I think, to a certain extent, it's, we're always going to see it different because we're of a different generation, and they will. So I learn to adjust to the technology in different ways, and certainly like when you're talking about the potential of being addicted to your avatar and so forth, we're not learned to adjust. Used to seeing this, you go back in the time 20 years ago, people started doing really stupid things of walking around with a piece of plastic to their ear, and used to and talking to it, whereas we all do that now with our mobile phones, and it's just, this is all just new technology, and it's because we're not used to it and talking to it, and certainly seeing the children use it in their particular way.
Yeah, definitely. So do you think that the vision of future education that you see in the book, and you will see hopefully in the film, well, I know you've seen the film because I've read the cast list, and teacher, someone's credited as teacher, so there must be at least one education scene that takes place inside the school. I'm hoping that the quotes that I read out before, I'm hoping that some aspect of that is actually manifested on the screen. But Chris Long, do you think that vision of a fully virtual classroom, a fully virtual education system do you think that's viable? Do you think that's feasible? Do you think that's right?
Okay, good question. So I think there's going to be two streams. I think that's the education coming along now. So what we're investing in at the moment, and we're starting to put the research and development into, is supplementing, much like you do and a lot of places around the world are doing at the moment, is supplementing that education with VR. We've got both academic and vocational. So the vocational is like a key area that we're starting to look at now. We can do some great things with. However, it will always be part. A lot of the way I look at working is it's like 20 minutes within VR and then go and work, but to look outside of it, and come back and do 20 minutes in and then sometime outside of it. However, that said, I think there's now an awful lot of potential and research going into what would become fully immersive, for the fact that we've been speaking of the cost of education, certainly here in the UK, in a task force have been put together to be able to look at the cost and how we can bring it down. And using this technology, you can massively reduce the cost of this education. A particular example of that is to look at, for instance, where we are here, we've got a net we can cast around our college to get educators from, get the teachers from. It gets to a point where it's too far away and no one can afford to travel in, for a day's work to go and teach. Yeah. Whereas now I can get a lecturer from America, for instance. We can set up a session like this, and we can have the lecturer from America book for 2 hours, he'll come in, deliver his session, and then disappear off. So I see some courses going totally online and virtual, whereas you'll be able to sign up to a course, you'll have your teachers come from wherever they are in the world, and you won't need to go to a physical location until it comes to maybe do physically cannot be done in VR, or what we can imagine can be done in VR at the moment. But at some point, as I say, I think it will be, you can get an online course completely.
Definitely agree. And for those that are not already aware, I don't mind giving a shout out to Mike McCready up in Canada, who is planning the first fully I think, is it next month? It's April, isn't it? That he's doing it. He's using a different platform. He's using the Rumi platform. I've actually agreed to speak at that event. I know he's got Kathy Heck, a couple of other great speakers. So it'd be interesting. It's interesting to see that the social side of things. I think it's us. It's just because of the fact that, I mean, Christian, how many HTC Vives have you got? How many high level headsets and high level laptops have you got where you are? I know I've only got a couple. Most people maybe have got one, more than half a dozen. I doubt it. There's not the potential for these social within VR just yet. And I think this is where the Oculus Go and the focus and the standalone revolution is really where it's at, isn't it? That when the processor's cheap enough and untethered, when everything's here in the headset, and the headset is the size, unfortunately the image has changed for me, but the size of the one that you see him wearing in the alongside as well, I think it's really important, the haptic suits. It was funny, earlier on this morning, I mentioned to some of you that I was at a water park, and one of the things I did at this water park was an experience where I had a fish spa. So I put my feet into a tank and fish ate my feet. And I tweeted a picture into a Zen mood before the event this evening. And Paola, I don't know if she's in here, Paola from China, she was saying something along the lines of, it's Rupert, I can't remember, but somebody said, it's nice to see some experiences aren't virtual. And the first thing I thought was,
it wasn't me.
If this was virtual, I wouldn't be feeling it. And I think that's going to be my arm's going to suddenly. Plus there's this funky arm syndrome. Do you remember that?
You've got a good point there.
There was that one time when my arm completely froze up like this, and I was moving around and my arm just stayed still. But yeah, what I mean is, ultimately being able to engage more than just what we hear and what we see. I think to really develop experiential learning, starting to involve haptic stuff is really important as well. Rupert, do you think that there is potential for students in, say, time to their school to exist like this?
Only fools or geniuses make predictions 10 years ahead for technology. So I'll a little bit because I'm neither. There's definitely huge potential, and I think one of the trends that we're seeing for technology in general is greater access to education. So from, low cost mobile devices going out to areas for either for self-learning, self-guided based learning in places that it's harder to reach. So I think that the book kind of nails the economies of scale there that I think you can achieve with virtual reality. Like you say, the headsets, these standalone headsets will just continue to get cheaper and cheaper. They're very compressible price for that kind of technology. So it will pretty soon be that they come free in a packet of cornflakes, and it's, everybody's got one. So there's definitely potential there.
That is actually a nice touch in the book, isn't it? The fact that the kit that Wade starts out with is not the best kit. And there are other people that have got much higher level kit, and his kit changes as he goes through the
right. So what Chris was saying about the avatars, this kind of digital divide, even within the virtual world. It was interesting. I reread the book actually for this session, and I noticed there were still real schools in his world, in the book world, but they were very, very expensive. So there was almost this two-tier system where the proper quality education you could get was still taught by real teachers in a flesh and blood environment, and that definitely speaks to some of the best aspects of teaching that I experience anyway. Strong mentors, one-on-one, kind of that transmission of enthusiasm. Wade's experience in school on Ludus is a very cold experience. The teacher teleports into a room like this and teleports out again almost as soon as the lesson is over. And there's, he has no mentors. He has a real people. They're all kind of computer game characters. So there's definitely the good aspects of education don't scale that way, unfortunately.
I spoke on a panel last year about AI and potential for is that classic question that's getting asked a lot now. Will we see robots in the classroom? I've got someone I'm just going to mute. Hang on one second. And it's an interesting one because obviously you can have an AI that has all the knowledge in the world and instant access and can deliver a completely adaptive, personalized curriculum to a student. But when that same 7-year-old student falls over and cuts their knee, can an AI, can a robot have the same, perform the same duty of care? Can it empathize with that child and help that child get through that much more personal situation? And I think you're right in terms of this type of space with that. If you don't bring the character that you bring into your regular classroom with you, then it can be quite a sterile experience. Hence the dinosaur. No, this is
absolutely.
This is the reason that I bring all this funky stuff in with me when we do these, just so that we've got not just to dress the set, but just to kind of lighten the tone a little bit, because this isn't Rec Room, this isn't Old Space, this isn't where people are going just to shoot hoops. We're kind of sitting here just and chatting quite serious stuff most of the time, apart from when we jump on Mars and I put a giant chick in there. But Chris Madsen, just and chatting, just to kind of bring things together now. So what's your take on this? Do you think that vision that we see in the book that we're going to see in the film, do you think that's a possibility? Do you think it should be a possibility?
So I do think it is years away for us to spend extended time in a virtual reality classroom. That's not going to happen until we get that comfort level where it needs to be. It is going to be these shorter experiences, but I think we're at a place very quickly. I'm going to say this year, we're at a place where we should be doing these smaller experiences. Well, one of the things I'm so excited about is these, like the Oculus Go. Up till now, it was for $6,000, you could get 3 full Vive systems, for example, a high-end system for a classroom or for a lab. But now for that $6,000, I can have 30 students with an Oculus Go. And it's so easy to use. You don't have to connect it to a computer. You just pick it up and put $1,000 on your head and you're in. It's that easy. That's a big barrier. I mean, even plugging in a cord, even booting up a system is a barrier for VR. And put it on your head now, it's just becoming incredibly easy. For $6,000, 30 students. I mean, that I'm hoping is going to shake things up.
Yeah, definitely.
Now
it reminds me, I'm old enough to remember just about old enough to remember the early days of PCs coming into schools, and I'm sure Rupert and Christian will empathise with this. The fact that what we started out with was that one PC on a school trolley that maybe your class got to use once a week or once a month, and it was wheeled in, and that was only if your teacher was competent enough to plug a trolley, get in and wasn't scared of it. And then from there, we evolved into laptop trolleys, which perhaps didn't get used as much as they should have been. And then it was really get in and really it was the iPad, wasn't it? It was the iPad that changed the game in the classrooms. Mm-hmm. It really was. Mm-hmm. And it's exactly what Chris Madsen's just said. It's the fact that the iPad, iPad was a 3-year-old could pick it up and interact with it. And then you could give it to them without even giving them any instructions. Pad was
familiar with 3D through these, 2D screens. They've explored 3D. It's almost like their brains are wired for this new paradigm that they're familiar with VR is bringing into the world, and they are ready for it. These kids are asking my wife about it. When is VR coming into the classroom? I can't wait to get our VR is bringing in first VR headset. I mean, they are primed and ready, and this movie is going to help perpetuate that as well. But yeah, this generation is ready for this first VR headset experience.
Definitely. Right, guys, thank you so much for joining me this evening. Guys in the audience as well, massive thank you to you all for joining me. What I'm going to do is I'm going to stand up and I'm going to move my chair away. If you need to head on, you're welcome to head on. If you've been with us before and you've done the whole after party inside thing and you want to head on, that's cool. If you want to stick around, then what we'll do is I'll unmute everyone. It'll become deafening. We won't be able to hear each other very well, but I'll jump everybody to Mars and we can run around on the surface of Mars and we'll do some fun stuff. And you can all take crazy selfies that you can share on Twitter. If you do, please use the hashtag CPD in VR.